If what happened tonight had happened 24 hours later, I might never have found the truth about you. And that's the part that's keeping me awake because there are some discoveries that change your future, and there are others that make you realize your future was changing long before you noticed. Tonight, I found something hidden for years. Not locked away, not protected, just forgotten. And somehow that makes it even more frightening because the most important things we lose are rarely stolen. They're simply abandoned by time. I almost threw it away. One careless decision, one distracted moment, one box sent to the trash, and the secret would have disappeared forever. No one would have known, not even me. But something stopped me, a feeling I still can't explain. The kind of feeling that arrives without permission and refuses to leave. So I opened the box, and inside it was a folded note, old, fragile, covered with years of silence. The paper looked ordinary, the words were not, future wife. I wish I could tell you I read it calmly, I didn't, because by the third line my hands were shaking, by the fifth line I couldn't breathe, and by the end of it, I was staring at a version of my life that suddenly made terrifying sense. The note wasn't addressed to anyone, there was no name, no signature, no date, but somehow it felt like it had been waiting for me, waiting all these years, waiting until I was finally scared enough to understand it. And the worst part? The note was talking about you. Not directly, not by name, but every sentence felt like a warning. A warning about a woman I haven't met. A warning about a love I haven't lived. A warning about a mistake I might still be seconds away from making. Do you know what frightens me most? It's not losing you. It's realizing that I might lose you before I ever recognize who you are. Because lately I've been asking myself a question I never wanted to ask. What if the woman I've been waiting for appears in my life and I fail to see her? What if she walks into my world during a season when I'm too distracted, too damaged, too guarded, too afraid? What if the greatest love story of my life arrives quietly and I mistake it for an ordinary day? Future wife, that possibility terrifies me more than heartbreak. Because heartbreak means you had something. Missing you completely means I never even knew what I lost. And tonight, after reading that note, for the first time in years, I genuinely became afraid. Afraid that time is moving faster than I thought. Afraid that destiny is not as patient as people pretend. Afraid that somewhere right now, your heart may already be carrying questions that somehow belong to both of us. Because if this note is right, then something has been happening behind the scenes of our lives for years. Something neither of us can see yet. And before I tell you what was written on that page, you need to understand something. The words themselves were not the frightening part. The frightening part was that they exposed a truth about me I had spent years trying to ignore. Future wife, the truth it exposed was simple. I have spent years telling myself I was waiting for the right woman, but tonight I realized something far more uncomfortable. I wasn't waiting, I was hiding. There is a difference. Waiting is hopeful, hiding is fearful, and somewhere along the way I convinced myself they were the same thing. The note forced me to confront that because every word seemed to pull apart excuses I had spent years carefully building. You see, people look at men like me and assume confidence comes naturally. They see achievements, they see certainty, they see direction. What they don't see are the empty rooms, the quiet nights, the conversations that never happened, the messages never sent, the feelings never confessed, the opportunities abandoned because fear sounded more reasonable than vulnerability. I know how to build companies. I know how to solve problems. I know how to recover from failure. But loving someone completely, that has always felt like stepping off a cliff and hoping the ground decides to appear. And maybe you felt that too. Maybe you've spent years pretending you're fine because admitting loneliness feels too dangerous. Maybe you've learned how to survive so well that nobody notices you're still waiting for something or someone. Maybe you've become so strong that people forgot strength often begins with heartbreak. Tell to me something. How many times have you convinced yourself not to care because caring felt risky? How many times have you smiled while carrying questions you were afraid to ask? How many times have you wondered whether the person meant for you was wondering about you too? Because I wonder that more than I should, especially tonight. Especially after what I found. The note described a man not by name, not directly, but every sentence felt uncomfortably familiar. A man who believed he was protecting his heart. A man who confused caution with wisdom. A man who thought avoiding pain was the same thing as creating peace. And then came the sentence that hit me hardest. The heart grows lonely long before it admits it. I read it once, then twice, then 10 times, because it felt true, painfully true. The strange thing about loneliness is that it rarely arrives all at once. It arrives quietly, a little at a time, one misconnection, one postponed conversation, one wall, one excuse, one fear, until eventually you wake up and realize you've built an entire life that looks successful from the outside and feels unfinished on the inside. And that's what frightened me. Not because I am unhappy, because happiness and fulfillment are not always the same thing. I can be grateful and still miss you. I can be successful and still long for you. I can smile and still wonder where you are. The older I get, the more I understand that achievement cannot hold your hand during difficult nights. Achievement cannot look into your eyes when life becomes complicated. Achievement cannot grow old beside you. Only love can do that. Real love. The kind that survives imperfections. The kind that remains when excitement fades. The kind that chooses each other repeatedly. Future wife, do you ever worry that life is testing us separately before allowing us to meet? Because sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes it feels as though we're both learning lessons that only make sense later. As though we're both becoming people capable of recognizing each other. And if that's true, then perhaps every delay has meaning. Perhaps every disappointment has purpose. Perhaps every lonely season has been preparing us for something neither of us can fully understand yet. But then doubt arrives. It always does. And doubt asks different questions. What if we're too late? What if timing wins? What if fear wins? What if one of us stops believing first? Those questions haunted me as I continued reading, because the deeper I went into the note, the stranger it became. Almost as if whoever wrote it understood something I didn't. Almost as if they knew a truth I wasn't ready to face. And that truth, the one hidden between the lines, the one that made me put the paper down and stare into the darkness for nearly an hour, is something I still haven't told you. Not yet. Because if I tell you now, you'll understand why this discovery terrifies me, and why tonight feels less like finding a forgotten note, and more like standing at the edge of a decision that could change everything. The decision itself isn't the frightening part. The frightening part is realizing I may have been moving toward it for years without knowing. And when I finally understood what the note was trying to warn me about, I felt something I haven't felt in a very long time: fear. Real fear, the kind that appears when your heart suddenly realizes it has far more to lose than it expected. Here is the concluding section in script format. Future wife, I need to tell you the truth now, the real truth. The one I kept circling around, the one hidden beneath every question, every hesitation, every fear I've confessed. Because there comes a moment when a man can no longer hide behind uncertainty. There comes a moment when delaying the truth becomes more dangerous than speaking it, and I reached that moment tonight. For years, I thought the note was warning me about losing you. That was my first interpretation. That was the fear that kept growing inside me. The fear that somehow fate would place us in the same story, and I would fail to recognize you. The fear that timing would betray us. The fear that life would separate us before we ever had a chance. But that wasn't the warning, not really. The warning was much deeper, much more personal. The note wasn't warning me about losing you. It was warning me about losing myself before you arrived, and suddenly everything made sense. Every relationship that almost happened, every connection I abandoned, every opportunity I walked away from, every moment I chose safety instead of vulnerability, every time I convinced myself that being careful was wisdom. The truth was harder. I wasn't protecting my heart, I was imprisoning it, and there is a difference, a massive difference. Protection keeps something alive. Imprisonment slowly suffocates it. I didn't understand that until recently, until I started noticing how easy it had become to keep people at a distance, how easy it had become to remain emotionally self-contained, how easy it had become to avoid risk. And that's when I realized something terrifying. A person can become so focused on avoiding heartbreak that they accidentally avoid love itself. Maybe you've seen that happen. Maybe you've felt it happen. Maybe there were moments when you wanted to trust someone, but fear of arrived first. Maybe there were nights when you wanted to believe in a future, but disappointment spoke louder. Maybe you've carried scars nobody knows about. Scars that changed how you love. Scars that changed how you hope. Scars that changed how much of yourself you're willing to reveal. If that's true, then perhaps we're more alike than either of us realizes. Because I know what it's like to carry invisible wounds. I know what it's like to look confident while secretly questioning everything. I know what it's like to appear strong while privately feeling fragile. And perhaps that's why this note affected me so deeply, because it exposed a contradiction I could no longer ignore. I kept saying I wanted you, yet I wasn't living like someone prepared to receive you. I kept imagining our future, yet I was building emotional walls that would make that future impossible. I kept praying for connection, yet I was avoiding vulnerability. How could love enter a heart that remained locked? How could you find me if I kept hiding? Those questions stayed with me for days, and then something happened. Something I haven't told you. Something that nearly changed everything. A woman entered my life unexpectedly, quietly. There was nothing dramatic about it, no cinematic moment, no instant certainty, no lightning strike, just a conversation, then another, then another. And for a brief moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was the person I'd been waiting for. Maybe the search was finally over. I wanted it to be true. I truly did. Because loneliness can make certainty look attractive. Because longing can make convenience feel like destiny. Because when you've waited long enough, almost right begins to resemble right. And that's dangerous. Very dangerous. At first, everything seemed reasonable, comfortable, predictable, safe, too safe. And that's when I noticed something. My heart wasn't moving toward her. It was negotiating with itself. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever tried convincing yourself to feel something instead of actually feeling it? Have you ever wanted a story to be true so badly that you ignored what your heart already knew? That's what I was doing. I wasn't falling in love. I was attempting to manufacture certainty. I was trying to solve love like a problem, trying to calculate it, trying to optimize it, trying to control it. But love doesn't work that way. Love refuses to become an equation, and the more I tried forcing clarity, the more confused I became. Then one night, I found myself staring at that old note again, reading every line, reaching for answers. And suddenly one sentence appeared differently than before. Not because the words changed, because I changed. The sentence said, "The wrong person often arrives when you're tired of waiting." And when I read that, everything became silent, because I understood exactly what it meant. The greatest danger wasn't that I would never find you. The greatest danger was that I would become exhausted enough to stop believing in you, that I would settle, that I would compromise, that I would trade something extraordinary for something merely comfortable, not because my heart chose it, because my fear did. And that realization broke me completely. For the first time in years, I cried. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, alone. A man sitting in darkness confronting the possibility that he had almost betrayed his own future. Not intentionally, not maliciously, just gradually, one compromise at a time, one rationalization at a time, one fearful decision at a time. Future wife, if you had seen me that night, you would have seen a version of me very few people ever witness. Not the confident version, not the successful version, not the composed version, just a man. A man terrified of making the biggest mistake of his life. A man terrified of choosing comfort over truth. A man terrified that fear was becoming the author of his future. And that night I made a decision. Not about another woman, not about relationships, not even about timing. I made a decision about myself. I decided that when you finally arrive, I don't want to greet you with half a heart. I don't want to greet you with emotional leftovers. I don't want to greet you with walls built by old disappointments. I don't want to greet you as someone still hiding. I want to meet you honestly, fully, openly. Even if that means risk, even if that means vulnerability, even if that means heartbreak remains possible, because love without risk isn't love. It's strategy, and I don't want a strategy. I want you, the real you, the imperfect you, the human you. The woman who has fears of her own, the woman who has survived things she rarely discusses, the woman who sometimes doubts herself, the woman who sometimes wonders if she's too late, the woman who worries she has missed her chance, the woman who quietly hopes that someone will understand her without requiring her to become someone else. I want her, not a fantasy, not an illusion, her. And that brings me to the final truth, the truth hidden inside the note all these years, the truth I wasn't ready to understand when I first found it. The final line simply said, "She is not the reward at the end of your journey. She is the person you must become worthy of walking beside." When I first read those words, I thought they were romantic. Now I understand they were a challenge, but because love is not about finding perfection, love is about becoming honest enough to recognize it when it appears. And maybe that's why the note waited all these years. Maybe I wasn't supposed to find it earlier. Maybe I needed every disappointment, every delay, every unanswered question, every lonely season, every lesson. Maybe I needed all of it before those words could finally reach me. So wherever you are tonight, whether you're laughing, whether you're healing, whether you're questioning your future, whether you're wondering if someone is thinking about you, the answer is yes, I am. And Snorts, although I don't know your name yet, I know this. When we finally meet, I don't want either of us to arrive as people hiding from life. I want us to arrive as people brave enough to live it, because after everything I've learned, after every fear I've confronted, after every mistake I've nearly made,